Okay, so he's got, well, now it's 72. I think I said 50 or 60 at the time. They're all positioned on his bed. And so the mates have to put these teddy bears back exactly. Right, so there's a laminated card, a picture of all these bears in situ on the bed, in a bedside drawer next to his bed. And basically every day he gets up, does his thing. The mates come in to tidy the room, and they have to put these 72 bears back on his bed exactly as it is in this laminated photo. If they don't put them back exactly, he shouts and screams. He just goes into one.
So what's the chatter amongst the staff that this adult has got this bizarre collection?
Well, you know what? At the time, we all thought it was a bit weird. But, you know, I mean, 20 years ago or 20 odd years ago, however long it was, 98 to 2004, you know, obviously we thought it was weird, but, you know, we didn't think anything of it to a degree. But obviously, it's Prince Andrew. He's a bully anyway. But obviously, we never knew about coercive and bullying behaviour. We knew he was a bully, but the coercive side of things now, obviously, it's come to light where, you know, women have come forward and, you know, and men. And we've now realised what coercive behaviour entails. And this is a classic example of coercive and bullying behaviour together. If you do not put my teddy bears back in this order, I am going to shout and scream at you and intimidate you. This is from a senior member of the royal family, you know. And so when we look at it 20 years later, there's more an impact on how odd and strange it is.
And even odder and stranger since we first spoke 5-6 years ago.
Oh yeah. Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
We've seen just in recent days this huge news story that Prince Andrew was trying to check up on Virginia. Now, in the very beginning, he denied even knowing her. It's come out that he remained friends with Epstein for way longer. And he was talking about having more playtime with Epstein, and that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And checking up on Virginia. Do you think he's violated any laws at this point?
On the face of it, yeah. I mean, look, there's people. Virginia Giuffre led a very troubled life. All right. She's got people that are accusing of making stuff up. Now, listen, she was traumatized, right? Let's get this right. She was traumatized, a woman. She's been through a lot. She was seriously abused by various individuals, you know, and so some of the stuff she might have said may have been misconstrued. She may have made a mistake. But don't forget, the people out there who are doubters, remember, there's 12 million reasons why you should believe her. Yeah? No one pays £12 million, and so many people have said it, and I am saying it again. No one pays £12 million to someone they don't know for something they didn't do. All right, and we'll go into that later. What I've from the royal household side of point of view, because we never had this conversation because we didn't know it back then. But now all this stuff has come out. My point of view has changed, because I was always with you. I always said I only go by the facts. I'm not going to deviate off the facts and sort of guesswork. It's always go by the facts, and you've just pointed out a number of facts. And so let's take any offences disclosed so far. In terms of sexual abuse, unfortunately, all we had was Virginia's testimony. We didn't have any corroborating statements that could progress the investigation on this side of the wall. We didn't have any CCTV. We didn't have any DNA. So there was an issue. But what's happened now is the emails have sort of started to put the jigsaw puzzle together. Now, the problem Prince Andrew has, the email where I think it was the Queen's press secretary, if I'm right, that he emailed and said he's forwarded on Virginia's details, including a national social security number, a name, and her date of birth, to his PPO. All right. So we now know that he's basically saying he's asked his PPO as a police officer, a public servant, to potentially commit an offence of misconduct in a public office. Now, that comes into play, or conspiracy. Now he's involved in conspiracy because it's two or more people. So him asking, and if the police officer then carries out the task of using the police national computer or other intelligence systems to check if Virginia has a criminal record or if there's any intelligence on her, that is the offence complete. All right. So on the face of it, the prima facie evidence looks like that is what he's asked the officer to do. then we look at what did the officer do. Now, I know, and as we've explained before, I know people, if they've seen my interviews before, know that Prince Andrew is a horrible, nasty bully. You do not want to get on the wrong side of him. All right. So his PPO is now going to be put between a rock and a hard place by being given that information to act upon it on Prince Andrew's behalf. Now, me personally, I would think that what he would do if he's switched on, it'd be a sergeant or an inspector. If he's clever enough and astute enough, which I'm pretty sure would be, he would pass that up the chain of command. It's a hot potato. So he would have took that to the superintendent on 14.2, SO 14.2, which is the close personal protection teams. And that superintendent would have ultimately took it to Lord Loughborough, the commander of Royal Protection at the time, who now, incidentally, is the master of the household for the King at St James's Palace, which was brought up. You've obviously seen the news. It was recently brought up. Oh, new information from Sky News, breaking news. It wasn't breaking news. I put it on Twitter in 2019. Yeah, I put it on Twitter saying, what a surprise. The commander of the Royal Protection Command at the time when Prince Andrew was doing this, that, and the others, has now retired one day and turned up at St James's Palace as the master of the household the next. Yeah, so you can see there's it potentially stinks, but he was a lord. He was a lord anyway. So potentially, obviously, he's then been offered a job and he's took it. Could be quite innocent, or there might be another explanation, but I haven't got the facts. I can't, make things up.
Let's go back in time a bit then, Paul. So if someone in Prince Andrew's position is going to travel to America to spend 4 days with someone convicted of these crimes against kids, what is the protocol with his own security team? Would they have run the checks on who he's visiting? Would they have advised him not to go? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, 100% they would have run the checks. I think I said before, they've got a foreign travel office. Although it's a private trip, he would still be subject to, obviously, the security checks because he's a senior member of the royal family. So they're not going to let him just disappear. He could be kidnapped, he could be murdered. Do you know what I mean? So there's a whole sort of rule of thumb that they use. When a royal is going abroad, they're going to contact the local state police or whoever it would have been. They're going to say, obviously, Prince Andrew is coming to visit this person. This is the address we've been given. They will then do necessary checks to make sure it's not owned by the Russians or the Chinese, or, it's not a convicted felon, which it was, in order to then risk assess whether or not this was a safe place for Prince Andrew to stay. That information, once it's flagged up it was a felon, would have been passed back to the Royal Protection Command in the Foreign Travel Office. They would then put a document together to say, look, this is the risk assessment. This is what we've found. Over to you. His PPO would have probably approached him and said, Your Highness, obviously, I know he's your friend, but, he's a convicted felon, and we're just flagging it up to you. And he's gone, well, and what? I'm going. Because don't forget, no one's going to tell Prince Andrew what to do. And probably a lot of the reason why he's in this mess is because no one's been able to tell him what to do. But there would have been that strict protocol in order to keep him physically safe. They would have checked where the nearest hospital is, where the nearest police station is. Obviously, the state police would have maybe offered protection team, which I think they did, to assist the UK officers in protecting him. And so all that would have been come into play. And there's no way that would not have happened. And potentially it could have been, I don't think maybe if it was flagged up to the Queen, she would have said, no, you are not going, because obviously the potential damage it could have caused the public image of the royal family. So, although it was a private trip, whether or not the Queen knew, I don't know.
So, in your opinion then, based on your knowledge of the protocol, would he have had to override the advice from his security team to go and spend time with Jeffrey Epstein, supposedly?
Yeah.
Because he was so honourable, he was going all that way to break up the friendship.
Yeah, 100% he would have. It wouldn't have been the first time he's overridden his security team's advice. As I said, Andrew does as Andrew wants. All right. So, we come to this nonsense because now all this stuff's coming out. Before, we had to give him the benefit of the doubt because we didn't have any firm evidence to prove that he was lying, apart from the Emily Mate list, which gave us a good indication that A, he was thick, and B, he was a liar. All right. but it's just been confirmed over a period of time with more information and more information that's come out. So yeah, I mean, who in their right mind? And I've said it in other news, but we'll go through it again because obviously you've got people out there, and we asked the question to the people who are watching this: if a friend of yours you found out to be was a convicted paedophile, what is your first reaction you're going to do? Especially if they're in America, you're going to ring them up and say, delete my number and F right off and put the phone down. That is what a reasonable person would do. And that's what we go by in law. What would a reasonable person do? Well, that's what a reasonable, sensible person would do. As a senior member of the royal household, not to do that, we've got an issue. And the issue is, why did he not do that? Because there was an issue with whatever's gone on between them. And he's thinking, I need to go over to America to make sure Jeffrey Epstein is not going to throw me under a bus. That is the conclusion I've now come to, given the evidence that is available. And by the balance of probabilities, that is exactly what has happened. And any logical person would come to the same conclusion. So yeah, with that word he uses, the honourable thing to do, that's not the right word to use when you're going to visit a paedophile. Yeah. So when I come back to he's thick, there's an indication he's got no idea what he's saying, because he thinks I'm Prince Andrew and everyone's going to believe me, and that'll be the end of it. And I'll go back to playing golf, and you can go away now because you're peasants, and I'll give you my statement, and that's it. And I'm that's fact. No, sorry, that's not right. Because the honourable thing to do would have been to speak to the FBI when you had the chance. If you're innocent and someone has made a malicious allegation against you, again, a reasonable person would fight that allegation, because it's not true, right? He didn't do that. So then we're building up now a package of evidence, aren't we? Although it's substantial at the moment, not substantiated in terms of physical whatever, but it's a information that we're getting there to put a picture together of a person.
So when he said he was going out there to break up this relationship with Jeffrey, and we've since found out that he was the guest of honor at Jeffrey's. You're saying that his ulterior motive was to make sure that Jeffrey wasn't going to throw him under the bus, but because he's low IQ, that completely blew up in his face.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, he was obviously worried. I mean, if you look at that picture Annette Wetheridge took, and she was the person who took it. I met her at Andrew Lowney's book launch for Entitled. And we were talking about the picture. And if you look at his face, they're not having a jolly time, are they? They're not walking along. He's heavily in some sort of mode of questioning or, dialogue. So I'm thinking in that sort of instance, and what we know now in terms of the emails we've seen, that he's trying to work out a story, a strategy to minimise any blowback that potentially could come from what's going to come out in the future. That's a guess from me, but it's a logical one based on what information we now have.
Why do you think then, if he was on this covert mission to minimise his exposure via Jeffrey, he went out for a walk with him and got himself photoed with him? Is he that dumb?
Yeah, I mean, look, he was fitted up. Let's be honest, he was fitted up because they had the picture or the video of the young lady leaving the house with him hiding behind the door. I mean, why was he hiding behind the door? He's probably in his underpants. I mean, you've gone there to break off a relationship. You've took 4 days. Have you got a stutter? Or I mean, what? Why has it took you 4 days to say goodbye? It's bad enough he's gone 3,000 miles to say goodbye, but then spend 4 days trying to get it out. No, sorry. He's gone there to work out a strategy to minimise the damage to himself, and obviously in the process, he's obviously been seeing women because he let this woman out, and the way if you look at the picture of the way it was a little creepy open of the door, like off you go, and then So when we look at what we know now about him, and if you've read the book inside, then he's a sleazebag and he's been caught basically.
So do you think that Jeffrey then was using Andrew's idiocy against him to use that visit to ensnare Andrew in even further?
I think it was probably trying to keep Andrew on side in order to legitimise himself still, because at that time, the walls were crumbling. And I think he probably had the impression, well, if Prince Andrew's still by my side, then everyone else is going to stay by my side because he's a member of the royal. So he's trying to use Prince Andrew to legitimise himself after his conviction. Yeah. And to a degree, it probably worked because even Prince Andrew still would not, even when it all come on top, still would not, say, I wish they never met him. Instead, he defended his relationship with him. The man was and still is deluded to do that. Yeah. So it wouldn't have took a lot for him to go over. He's obviously oblivious to the kind of impact, that it's going to cause and that it has caused. In that interview, in the Emily Maitlis interview, he digs such a hole, he's still climbing out of it,
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. And this ties in with, we interviewed a guy called Ari Ben Menashe twice now, and he's former Israeli military intelligence. And he said that Prince Andrew was a useful idiot for Epstein. And Epstein parlayed his relationship with Andrew to razzle dazzle other elites.
Yes.
I'm hobnobbing with this guy. This is the kind of level of people I'm associated with. You're safe to come and hobnob with me too.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. He was used as like a flag of legitimacy. That's what he was used for. And as I said, and if you look at Andrew, if there's clips of him in part, he's quite socially awkward. He laughs abruptly, and he's very tense when he's talking to people. But I think it's because he's insecure, and I think his insecurity shows when he's off duty and he's not on camera, and he starts bullying the staff. Yeah, because that's the only way he feels like he's a man. He's got some sort of control. Because when he's out there, and so many people said that he's when he talks in dinners and all the rest of it, he's rude. He upsets people, but he doesn't think he's upset them. He says, things that you wouldn't say to a stranger. So he's definitely got some sort of as far as I'm concerned, some kind of personality disorder for him to perform the way he has.
All right, we've got 1,000 people watching live right now across all the platforms. I'm here with Paul Page, former Royal Protection Officer. I'm going to put Paul's links in the live chat if you want to watch part 1. If you want to follow him on X, if you want to get his book off Amazon. And we are live, so if you do have any questions for Paul, please put them in the live chat wherever you're watching in the world. We'll get them to him. I've still got quite a few more questions myself. And, I'm just trying to imagine your reaction as you're watching the BBC interview. On X, people were posting things right away, showing him in casual clothes in London, showing him sweating.
Yeah.
But you must have, because of your working with Prince Andrew, I imagine you've got some personal stories whereby you can rebut some of those claims he made during that interview, like not sweating, etc.
Yeah, I mean, that one, I said it in the Australian interview. I've said it in a couple of other interviews. I was asked, had I seen Andrew sweat before? And I had. And it was a June, July, early 2000s in the back garden at Buckingham Palace. I was on duty in the 2-0 post, as it's called, which overlooks the back garden of Buckingham Palace and the lake. And it was early afternoon, and Prince Andrew appeared with his personal protection officer, who was carrying his golf bag. So, which isn't unusual at first, all right, because he's the bag carrier, plus he protects him. And then he proceeds, because I remember it, because I had to stand outside my post to attention, because when a member of the royal family is in the garden, the security officer, obviously the police officers, myself, would have to stand to attention. And only if they come to you, you would salute them, and you would not engage in conversation unless they said something to you first. Yeah. So it's all strict protocol. So on this particular occasion, it was quite hot. I was enjoying a nice sit down in my post, in my chair. And obviously I'm standing up to attention now. It's quite hot. I'm sweating. I've got a bulletproof vest on, guns and all the rest of it, a top hat. And the PPO, his protection officer, proceeds to set his golf bag down. Andrew selects a club, throws about a dozen golf balls on the floor, and then he starts whacking them up towards the lake. I don't know, it's 50 meters, whatever it is, I can't remember. But once he started running out of balls, the protection officer, bear in mind this is a highly trained officer, yeah, been on all the courses, been there, seen it, done all singing, all dancing, protection officer. He's now a fucking ball boy. Pardon my French. He's now a ball boy. Yeah. And he walks up to the golf balls, picks them up and starts rolling them back to Prince Andrew. And that is the reason I remember this particular incident, because I looked and I rolled my eyes and I thought, I've seen it all now. A police officer is now a ball boy for Prince Andrew. So that was the significant reason why I remembered it. The second significant reason I remembered it was because then a footman appears with a towel over his arm. You know, you see a waiter with a towel over the arm and the tray, and that's exactly what came out. With a drink on the tray, walks up to Prince Andrew. He was casually dressed. I can't remember. It was like a polo t-shirt he was wearing, right? But anyway, he's gone up to Prince Andrew. I'm having to stand there because he's about 10 feet away from me. Right, so he offers the tray. Prince Andrew takes the drink, drinks it, puts the tray down, takes the towel, and then wipes his face. Well, you don't wipe your face if there's nothing on it. So what was he wiping off? It had to be sweat. Yeah. All right, or you wouldn't need a towel. And so obviously the footman disappears with the empty drink and the towel. He's out there for about half hour, whatever it was. He then puts all the stuff back, and then they go inside, and he's obviously warming up because he's off to Sunningdale for a game of golf or whatever. Yeah, and then off he goes. But that was significant to me because I thought, hang on a minute, you're saying you can't sweat for whatever reason. I've seen you sweating, personally seen you sweating. So from that moment on, I realised that this was going to be a car crash because, like you said, I immediately Googled it. I put stuff on it straight away, and there was pictures of sweating profusely in nightclubs, and you know, I mean, that was just such a schoolboy error. Do you know what that was? That was panic. That was panic.
Do you think also an element of it was he was trying to bring in his military service to deflect?
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I'm a war hero.
Yeah. No. Let me tell you something now. Simon Weston is a war hero. Colonel H is a war hero. He is no war hero, and if he is, that's gone now. That's gone. You're known for something different now, mate. Unfortunately for you, you've got to reap what you sow. All right. You've led your hedonistic days. You've done this, that, and the others against what advice you would be given, because Prince Andrew doesn't take advice, and we are where we are now with him. Very serious situation. A constitutional crisis is on the cards. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's heating up every week. So another one of his claims was that he didn't go out in London in casual clothes.
Nonsense. I've seen him coming back with, like I said, a polo shirt or a shirt with no tie on. That is all nonsense, as we now know, because we've seen the emails. So all these things. Now, if this was a police interview, they would be all over him like a tramp on a burger. All right, he'd be getting tied in knots left, right, and centre, and he'd be walking out of that interview straight up to a charge. All right, so everything he was, as in my head as a police officer, I'm thinking, you should be saying no comment at this stage. Just save yourself and go no comment. You know, faint, do something, just get out of that interview because you're just ruining yourself. It was just, and you know why this is? And it's so blatant what happened to him. He's never, ever had to answer. And I've said this so many times. He's never had to answer to anyone. And all of a sudden he finds himself having to answer to an interviewer. He's never been in that position before. He didn't know how to handle it. He wasn't coached. But even if he was coached, he wasn't clever enough to avoid, you know, the questions in a manner that would give him some sort of, you know, defense. And that's what happened to him. He's in that bubble. He's in the royal bubble, and he's never had to be accountable for anything in his life. And the one time he tries to go out on his own, he crashes and burns.
So another one of his incredulous stories was his alibi of Pizza Express Woking. We immediately went up there and filmed at Pizza Express Woking. We asked the staff about Prince Andrew, and they said all inquiries have got to go to the corporate office. They're not allowed to speak to me. They're not allowed to say anything.
Yeah.
We checked, you know, the Tramp nightclub opened at 8, I think, and Pizza Express closed at 8. I mean, what were your thoughts when you heard this Pizza Express Woking story? And would there be a record of him at Pizza Express Woking? Yeah,
so as I said before, even though it was a private function, obviously his bodyguards, protection officers go with him everywhere. All right. And when it's a public place like that, if they drive into a private home, like a friend of his, then potentially they would sit in the car outside, escort him in, and then they'd wait in the car. Or they might go in the kitchen. If it's, you know, if it's the premises, they might wait in the kitchen. So there's two scenarios that would happen now. but they would always be with him. Would they have done a forward check? It's someone else's party. Potentially, if it's a party where there are other people involved, they may well go down to the premises to check, see where the exits are, the way it's situated, to make a potential contingency plan if something went wrong. I'm guessing on that one, but standard procedure, you would usually do some sort of recce. All right. If it's official, private, yes, potentially, maybe no. So there's a difference. If it's an official engagement, definitely. If it's a private one, potentially. But if he had gone to Pizza Express, so the protocol would have been his personal protection officer who went with him. It'd probably be one, maybe two if he's in a sort of a public area, would have a pocketbook. Excuse me, would have made notes in their pocketbooks to the effect of 6 o'clock, we're off to, Pizza Express, whatever it was. So obviously they're making a note of, they're tracking their day, where they're going. So obviously they keep that pocketbook. That's a record of what happens during the day. And it might have said, I don't know, purple 4-1, 20. So it was 1800 hours, purple 4-1 to Pizza Express in wherever it was. Yeah. So that's purple 4-1 is his code name. That's what he's called. Right. And then they would have gone. But don't forget, CCTV, witnesses. If Prince Andrew rocked into a pizza place, you'd remember it. Someone would remember that. All right. No one's come forward. No one said, actually, I worked there. They must have tracked people who worked there at the time, and they've all gone, no, I wasn't there. I mean, if someone did come forward, they'd probably get a knighthood, and said he was there, but no one else. So that the only, and don't forget, he came out with, he said, I know I was there because but the only way he could have been there is if his PA has kept the diaries, because obviously he had a PA all the time. So she would say, Your Highness, today you're going with your daughters to such and such. So she'd just remind him that this is what you got going. He probably knows in here, but she just would keep a diary to let him know what the structure of his day is going to be. Yeah. So I was thinking, maybe he's got this from the PA's notebooks, which they may have kept, because with police notebooks, I think they're kept between 6 and 8 years and then they're destroyed. Right. So I thought, it could be his PA has come forward with one of the books because they would keep them potentially, but no PA came forward. Bearing in mind the situation he's in now, if he's got some form of evidence, some form of documentary evidence or witness evidence, as in his PA, well, get a statement from her, produce that document, show that, prove that you was there, because that's going to help you massively. None of that came forward. It was just another fictional, whatever it was that Prince Andrew come out with, because we're all peasants to him. If you've been in the position that I have and seen the way he treats me, staff, like people he perceives to be below him, we're nothing. So therefore, in his mind, he's going to say whatever he wants, and we're numpties, and we're going to believe him. Unfortunately, you're the numpty, and we don't believe you. And that's the case. So the Pizza Express was died a death, because he produced no evidence, no factual evidence that could assist him or back up his story again.
Yeah, I was contacted by a lady who said she witnessed him in Tramp, and she was worried, though, about coming forward. Were you aware of him ever going to Tramp?
No. I mean, look, once he goes there, it's not my concern where he goes, or would not have been my concern in the professional capacity. So I wouldn't have been aware of where he went. The issue with the Tramps nightclub situation, people, yes, would recognise Prince Andrew, but would they recognise a young female? Because you wouldn't, obviously, your eyes would not be on who he's with, they'd be on a member of the royal family. It's just natural, interest. There's Prince Andrew's there. You wouldn't really be looking around scanning and making notes of who he was with. So maybe if she was there, no one would have been able to recognise her. So it could well be that he attended that. And don't forget, a colleague of mine came forward on the night in question where she alleges that he did sleep with her. My colleague, he spoke to me and said, listen, I believe that Prince Andrew did come back that night, because it was the only night that I'll ever remember that he turned up when everything had been shifted to the Royal Lodge at Windsor. So basically on in the weekend and Friday nights, the Queen, Prince Philip and Prince Andrew all go to Windsor. So obviously their valets will go with them, and their maids and footmen and all the rest of it at the other end will be ready to greet them. The beds and all the rest of it would be ready and all that sort of palaver. And we would be, our security board would say they're all, because for us it's important, because when they're not in residence, we have a completely different security procedure. If there is a breach of the palace walls, we treat it differently than what we do is if there was a member of the royal family in. It's sort of a difference. We scale it down, but if they're in, we scale it up, and the response is much different. And so we would have had a record that he was gone. But this particular night, my colleague was on the gate, and I can't remember what time he said it was, but he said all of a sudden, Prince Andrew, he'd given 30 seconds, his PPR said, yeah, we're coming in. But obviously they've caught him unawares, because he's meant to be in Windsor, not in London. And so he's roared up to the gate, started calling them buffoons, idiots, and all the usual stuff we used to have to take from him, because they hadn't got the gates unlocked in time. Well, the gates weigh a ton anyway. Then we've got to put the anti-terrorism barrier down. All this takes time. Well, you've just turned up in 30 seconds, you know? And so they're thinking, oh, he's back. They've had to tell the control room that he's come back out of the blue. This is unheard of. This doesn't happen. So that's why it stuck in my colleague's mind. And I said to him, well, listen, you're going to have to go public with it. But he was concerned for his, his pension and his safety, his safety and all the rest of it. So he did a story in the Mail with a friend of mine, Michael Gillard, but they kept his name out of it. He's a decorated Marine, decorated police officer with 30 years, 30 years exemplary service, right? This isn't, an idiot. This is the real deal. And if he says what he said, I believe him. Now, they went through the process of trying to obtain his duty status at the time. So basically, our unit would have on a daily basis, it would tell you, and it's a paper format, it would tell you who's on duty every day, what post they're on, what if you're in the car. So there's a record, a paper record of the day, and that would tell if he was there, plus his pocketbooks. He applied for that access to that paperwork under the Freedom of Information Act, and they said that all the records have been destroyed, unfortunately. So he could not prove that was the day when the allegation was made about Prince Andrew sleeping with Ghislaine. But it was a very unusual, unheard of incident to happen in that time. So, yeah.
So when you're working on the gate then, do you have to screen Prince Andrew's visitors? And what kind of frequency were women coming over to party with him?
Right. So, again, it's very important that people understand that, it was a big deal, us letting in people that we didn't know. It's a very big deal. And I'll give you a reason why that happened after a few years ago. The palace is one of the most protected places in the country, obviously. Yes, I know people are going to go, yeah, but this person got in, that person got in. That was years before I got there. There was a complete new setup, electronic stuff that I'm not going to go into detail. Fathers of Justice did get in while I was there. I remember if it was a fellow in a Batman outfit, climbed up on the colonnade and went along, but he was tracked from the time he got in to the time we got him down. He was tracked. We knew where he was. All right. There was cameras, beams, all kinds of stuff that would track you, physically track you. You're not hiding anywhere. We've got thermal imaging. The grass has got alarms in it, everything. All right. So this is all up to date stuff. And so when someone comes into the palace, the rules, the regulations are Monday to Friday, it's an office, it's a working palace. So the Queen would have guests, the King, now King Charles, would have guests coming in who'd use it as a place of meeting, Prince Philip, Edward, and they would all use it. They've all got their own offices with their equerries and their office staff that plan their events, plan their days in Buckingham Palace. So when they have meetings, obviously these people that are coming in would come into the palace via the north centre gate, which if you look at the front of the palace, to the right is where the entrance is, where all the guests to the palace present themselves before being allowed in. And so inside, so you've got two officers on the front gate, I think it's three now, but in there you've got an appointments book that you keep in your security posts. And what happens is, if you look at the front of the palace, the door that leads into it, there's another police officer there in plain clothes with some footmen, and they take the calls from all the offices, as I've just mentioned, from different members of the royal family. They then put all the appointments in a book in the privy purse, it's called. That's their office, the privy purse. Then the police officer will then ring, every time there's a new appointment, he will then ring the officers on the North Centre gate at the front and give him that appointment. We will then put that in our book. So the first point of call for this guest will be to present him or herself at that post, identify themselves, show ID. I'm pretty sure you show ID. We check our book. So it might say John Smith, appointment with the Queen at 11 o'clock. Can I see your ID, sir? Yeah, thank you. Ring up the privy purse. We've got John Smith here. Send him up. Yeah, send him up. So we'll say, right, so just go straight across the gravel and someone will greet you at that door. So there's a system, a security system for a reason. Because Joe Bloggs might not be Joe Bloggs, or Joe Smith, whatever. He might be a mentally deranged individual, which we get all the time. So I'm here to see the Queen. No, you're not. Unfortunately, you're not well. Sorry, but you're not here to see the Queen. You haven't got an appointment. So we get them type of people. So that is why there's a security procedure in place. Not only that, it's our role to protect the Queen, Prince Philip, Prince Andrew, and all those that are contained within that building. From terrorism, from obviously, as I said, from fixated people, from general, scumbags. So after 5 o'clock, when everything dies down and the staff leave, the only people that are left in there are the servants, obviously the police and the royal family. The procedure doesn't change in terms of we still have a record and an appointments book if the Queen or Prince Philip and Prince Andrew, if they have guests. The only difference on this one is the Queen and Prince Philip always adhere to the security protocol. So they would always say to the footman to pass on the message that they've got someone coming in. And we'd know the name. So we would know who was coming in. Prince Andrew, it was a different kettle of fish. A young lady's turning up at 6, ring the footman and he will come out and meet her and take her into the palace. Right. So who is the young lady? You don't need to know that. Just ring the footman. Right. But I need to know in case someone turns up and it's not the person you want me to bring in, let in and whatever else. No, that's not your business. Numerous times he's shouted and screamed and all the rest of it when we've asked for confirmation. Complaints were made, and then I get this as well from people. You enable, you let people in. Listen, right? I'm doing a job. Back then there was no offences disclosed. Prince Andrew wasn't what he is to be shown now. Yeah, he was a senior member of the royal household, and if he's telling us that we've got to breach strict protocol, we did complain about it. I made complaints about his abusive tone, the bullying. And the fact we're having to break strict security procedure when the Queen and Prince Philip are in, because he wants women in that we can't identify, and it's not in the appointment. All we've got is female at 6 o'clock, as opposed to the Queen's got somebody coming in, so we know who it is. And this was a common procedure with him. Untold women that would come in and present themselves after dark. We would have to call the footman and his personal footman, and he would come down or wait at the arches. We'd send her across. They'd go through the North Centre. So if you look at the palace, you go through the North Centre gate. But if you look, there's arches in the middle of the palace. And the first arch to the left is called the North Centre Arch. And that leads into a place called the Quadrangle. Now, in there is the doors to Prince Philip's, I forget what it's called now, but the Duke of York's door. He's got his own door. It's called the Duke of York's door. That's always unlocked, and Prince Philip's doors is unlocked. That is the only way they enter and exit the palace. The Queen, on the other hand, because this is all archaic now, what I'm talking about, this goes back 18th, 19th century. It's just like, it hasn't changed. The Queen, on the other hand, she enters and exits the palace. If you look at the palace from the right, head on to the right, there's a large wooden gate, and that is where the monarch goes in and out from. Right, so she will go through the wooden gate, and it will go to the garden entrance, and that's where she'll get. The only other person who can use that was at the time Prince Charles, because he was the future heir to the throne. So we're getting into technicalities now of how archaic and ancient, the system is, and it's very it's pertinent because we get onto why he ended up the way he did. So there's all these security procedures, but yeah, like I said, we had to break the rules for him and let these people in. And I've always said about the famous incident when the female turns up, and we had to stop her because this time we couldn't get hold of the footman. So we couldn't get hold of anyone from his staff to just to come out to escort this female into the quad. So we're thinking, right, we're in a rock and a hard place here because we don't know for sure if this is the female. So she said I'd only come in about half hour before, and there was 3 of us. I know who my colleagues were, and one of them was quite a tubby fellow. He was quite fat. And it's clear that Prince Andrew, when he came flying across into the palace, noted that. Because when we explained to the, quite reasonably, we said, we're really sorry, madam, but we can't just let you in until we get someone to come out and meet you. So she said quite reasonably, she said, look, shall I ring Prince Andrew? So we just said, yeah, that's no problem. So we're having a nice conversation. She wasn't put out. She was quite happy to wait and sort it out. And she rang him on his mobile, and he said put it on speakerphone and hand it to the officer. So my colleague, the tubby one, picked the phone up, and he said, listen to me, you fat lardy RC, let my guest in now. I'm going to come down there. All right. So she went bright red. We knew what was coming. So we just said, yeah, if you go through the North Centre Arch and turn left, go along far corner, just go through that door, and let me, because we knew he would come down, and the chances of us pounding the beat at Brixton the next day, holding each other's hands, were quite high. So yeah, and this was the kind of sort of things we had to go through in order to appease this idiot. Yeah, and no one should have to, and I've spoken out because he's a bully, he's a coercive monster. If the truth be known, he's terrorised young maids, he's terrorised his staff, he's terrorised police. He even rang the commander up one evening because we accidentally locked one of his guests. We locked the Centre Arch, which is the one I'm talking about, North Centre Arch. But we were told to leave it open because he had a guest that was going to leave later on in the evening, this female. But we forgot to pass that on to the new shift, so they went and locked it. So unfortunately, this young lady has come out to a set of locked gates, pitch dark. So she's rattling the gates. The officers can't hear her. There's traffic going by. And she's gone back inside and told Prince Andrew when he's marched out, he's gone up to the gate. He's shaking these gates. He might be shaking some railings at some stage in the future. We don't know yet. But he's shaking these gates and he's swearing and he's shouting. And eventually they heard him. And they went up to him and he went, you effing buffoons, you idiots, open these effing gates now. It was quite late. It was probably half 11 at night. So they've done that. They've took a beating off him. The lady's exited the palace. He's gone straight back into his apartments, picked up his phone and dialed the commander, the Royal Protection Commander, and gave it to him down the phone. Let him have it, verbal, it's everything. Unless he's talking to the, police commander, because some gates were, they were doing their job. At night, they have to be shut. Because if someone climbs over that fence, they could bolt towards that entrance, because that is insecure, because doors are open. So they did their job. We just forgot to say, listen, someone was, going to be coming out. But then she should have left by the side door anyway. So yeah, that's what he would do. He'd run up he wouldn't discriminate. He'd shout at anyone, So yeah, it's a funny state of affairs when I look back on it now, and I think Harry got away with complete murder.
You've got a few people asking about Ghislaine Maxwell visiting the palace.
Yes.
Did she have to go through the proper protocol, security checks, and get logged in, or was she off the books?
No, she was off the books. She was off the books in the daytime. So this is how I first come across her. We got. I think it was about one. He's got a 1 o'clock. So the privy purse. I've explained there, so people hopefully understand. There's a process that how we get the appointments through to the gate. The officers will ring up from the various roles, and they've got someone coming in. Then the privy purse will tell us. We write in the book. So the officer on the privy purse rings up in this particular day, and he says to me, "Right, Prince Andrew's got this person. Queen's got this person, but Prince Andrew's got a guest coming in at 1:30, and just put female coming." I said, "Well, what's the problem? Who is it?" He went, "Don't put the name in the book." That's what he said. Don't put her name in the book. So I said, "Right, who is it?" He said, Ghislaine Maxwell. I keep getting caned by people on the internet saying he keeps saying her name wrong. Do you know what? I really don't give a stuff. Ghislaine, she's banged up. It doesn't matter what her name is. Don't worry about it. All right. So anyway, Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, don't put her name in the book. So I was thinking, why is that? That's a bit weird. And then we started speaking, and we realised it was Robert Maxwell's daughter. So we said, well, that's a bit naughty, because if the Queen knew that, Prince Andrew was, and she was coming for a picnic. So we thought, if the Queen knew that obviously she was coming into the palace for a picnic, she might not be too happy about that, given what her father was up to. So I thought that was a bit strange. And the fact, obviously, we thought, oh, they probably don't want it in the book in case it gets out in the papers. That's what we were surmising anyway. So whatever. Anyway, come 1 o'clock, 1:30, a green Range Rover turns up with a driver. She was in the passenger seat. And he spoke. She never spoke. She just looked at us and looked away like we were dirt. And he just said, Ghislaine Maxwell for Prince Andrew. So we were told just to show them through to the quad. So we just directed them across. She just drove into the quad. Myself and my colleague came off post shortly after. We went through the garden gate. Obviously, as police officers, we can use that, the garden gate. And because there's a little man gate, it's not the whole thing being opened up. So we walked through the garden around to the police post, the police sort of office building we've got in the palace for our downtime, for our break. When we came back an hour later, there was a massive, we could see when we went through, to be fair, when we went through to go on our way into the our police lodge, we could see servants, footmen, maids setting up quite a big picnic, quite a lavish looking picnic. Didn't think anything. I thought, oh, maybe it's the Queen coming out, to have a sit on the grass. Anyway, on the way back, it wasn't. It was Ghislaine Maxwell and Prince Andrew having a nice cosy picnic, laughing and joking and all the rest of it. And again, we said, well, if the Queen looks out of the window and sees who plotted up on her grass, I'm sure she's not going to be too happy. And then we just went, and then after that, we were just told that she's to be let in, not to be stopped. So after that, she was in and out at will. No one else, and I've said it many, many times, no one else had that kind of access apart from her. She was like a member she had the same sort of access as a member of our family. She'd just sweep in and sweep out. We'd just see her come and put the barriers down and let her in. People have asked me, was she with anyone? Did it? I wouldn't know, because at that time, obviously, I knew her dad was a wrong un, but I wouldn't know if she did have people in the car. We couldn't stop it because it was Ghislaine Maxwell. We're not. Why are we stopping? We've been told, we've been ordered, do not stop that vehicle. So if she did have people in that Range Rover, because some of the back windows were blacked out, I think we wouldn't know. I wouldn't have paid attention to it because I knew that car and I knew who it was in there. So it was just a case of, right, she's in, shut the gates, who's next? And that was it.
Yeah, I'm almost finished reading Virginia's book. And the allegation, there was 3 of them against Prince Andrew. One of them is on the island where she says they're all having a sex party together. I'm just saying it lightly what was going on. They had a bunch of East European girls. They were joking that they were the easiest to do these horrible things to because they couldn't even speak English. And that was Prince Andrew, Jean-Luc Brunel, Epstein and Maxwell. So was there any indication that Prince Andrew and Maxwell had a sexual relationship?
Right. So from what I've just described, the intimate picnic, right? The multiple visits in and out, and I've always said what I've seen or heard. I've never ever speculated when I've obviously, because I think it's very important that you go by the facts. All right. Once you start deviating from the facts and start surmising, that's when there's a problem. All right. I've never changed my story. I've never added to it. I've never taken away. I've always stayed consistent. In fact, all my allegations I came out with, because I've got to address something. He's jumped on the gravy train. What gravy train? I said this in my defence case statement in 2008. So the stuff that I'm talking about now is 17 years old. Before anyone else got on this, I'd said that it's in law in my defence case statement, and the allegations that I made, the royal household and the Metropolitan Police tried to get them taken out of my defence case statement, and they failed miserably. All right, so when we go back to Maxwell, we assumed because of the picnic, because of the access, and a colleague of mine, as I was going to come to, said he's seen her come in and out 4 times in one day. Now, I still speak to Chris. He's a good friend of mine. He's the one who got me on royal protection. Yeah, he's done another one, 30 years exemplary service. So he's not an idiot. He's not going to talk nonsense. So I'm happy with passing that information on. All right. So as far as we were concerned, yeah, they were in an intimate relationship because the way it appeared, the way to us, the picnics, the in and out. Yeah, we assumed, made the assumption that they were in some form of intimate relationship. And let's be honest, they may well have been in a sexual relationship by the sounds of what Maxwell was like and Prince Andrew was like. It might have been friends with benefits. How do we know? We don't.
So the Randy Andy moniker came about because it was non-stop, wasn't it, with the female visitors?
Yeah, I mean, look, when I think when I think back now, I analyse what I've said back then, and then sort of Andrew Laney and that book and the stuff that he found out, and and the witness testimonies that he got to put that book together, it sort of joined a few dots for me in terms of what I might have thought but put to the back of my head, because he's a senior member of the Royal Family. Yes, he's a knobhead, but that's all we thought. A bully, and that sort of thing. But anything sort of sexual, a deviant type of thing, we wouldn't. We just thought he was he had a high sex drive, and so we always joke that he's probably got a revolving door in his bedroom. The amount of women that are going in and out, and when I realise now, and I start thinking about things, we very rarely saw the same woman twice, So there was enough women coming in. I was there for 6 years, so I saw quite a few, but I very rarely saw the same one twice. You'd think you'd probably see someone, if it's a friend or whatever, you see them on a regular basis, and we get to know them like we did with other members of the royal family. Got friends coming in, so we get to know who they are. And hello, nice to meet you. How's your day? But these women, and the after 5 o'clock business, because before 5 we'd have attaches from different military branches would come and visit him, and different people, men and women, together, business type people would be coming in to see him. Obviously, he was trade envoy at the time, I believe. So he would be having all these normal meetings, and then that stopped, and then obviously all these secretive meetings would, happen. Obviously, guests would turn up, and we weren't privy to their names. I mean, why would you not? Well, what is the big deal? When we think about it now, what was the big deal with him not just giving us a first name, or a name, so we can confirm it's that person? Because I'll go on to explain the reasons what happened was with that. It come back to bite him in the backside, because a few years ago, exactly this sort of thing. So the protocol that I've just given you there, how we had to breach strict security in order to appease him and let these unknown people in. He's at Windsor. The officers are on the gate at Royal Lodge. A female turns up in a taxi, and tells the officers that she said she was his fiancée. They've not questioned her, obviously, because then they're our counterparts in Windsor. They've probably had the hairdryer treatment as well, so they know I'm not getting. Okay, fine, in you go. I think even one of the officers paid for a taxi, for crying out loud, right? She's gone into the Royal Lodge. She's gone into his personal quarters. Turns out she's not his fiancée. She's obviously had got issues. She was a fixated person, and she's wandering around his private lodge. Before, luckily, they realised and detained her. Yeah, she could have had a gun, a knife, as I said before. She could have. You know what I mean? And that happened because of him. That was his fault. But those officers would have got dealt with for that. That they would have been blamed for that. Even that was Prince Andrew's fault. It would have fell to them. And this is a classic example. That could have turned out very different indeed. So yeah. So this is the problem with this man. He puts people in danger.
All right, we've got almost 1,500 watching live right now across all the platforms. Please support Paul on X. We've got the link for his book. We've also got the part 1, which has got his complete backstory in it. I'll put them all in the live chat again. Thank you for all the questions that are coming in. I know I'm hogging Paul right now. I've still got loads of questions myself, but I'll give you. I'll put a viewer one up there now. So, Lady of the Lake wants to know: did Paul meet the York daughters, and if so, what were they like?
Yeah, right. Okay. So I have been derogatory about Sarah Ferguson. I have recently, because obviously there's certain things that come out. Obviously, she tried to sell access to Prince Andrew a number of years ago for £500,000, I think it was, which showed her to be, a gold digger of somewhat, and dishonest and all the rest of it. But I used to see her coming in with the daughters. They were very young at the time, and I have to say, she was very pleasant.